All right, so let's get rocking. This is our little web chat in regards to helping find ways for parents and kids to manage their time at home during this coronavirus situation that is probably going to extend. I think the assumption at this point is probably going to extend at least through the end of the school year. And obviously, that's a whole lot of time for most parents to have with their kids throughout the week. People working from home, people having to manage complicated transitions between home and office, and I think a lot of parents are looking for some insight and some tips of how to handle this whole situation and to keep their kids on track and uh, on task, but also just engaged at home. So, the first question I would love to extend to the group, um, and we're gonna let Jen jump off with this. Um, I want to introduce everybody to um, everybody here. We've got uh, Christina, she's an ELI infant teacher of Stepping Stones. Dr. Tracy Saperstein, assistant principal at Kinsella Magnet School in Hartford. We have Jennifer Ball, she's a literary specialist in New Fairfield, and Hannah Shabesta, who's kindergarten teacher in Chicago. Jen, I'm going to toss this one at you here. We've been talking about sort of how to explain to our children, and obviously, as a parent of a child in elementary school and middle school and high school, I'm sure there's different strategies you've considered of employing or have already employed with them. Do you have any sort of experiences you'd like to express about how you manage this? Any insight for people?
Well, I asked my three children for kind of like feedback on how I did explaining it to them, and so um, they told me that the best way to explain would be to give facts and to show that it's serious, but not to make them scared. So don't be aggressive. Sometimes I can be overly um, aggressive to make sure that they understand. They said if I were to do it again, or if parents were to do it, they should um, make sure that they give facts, but not to be too aggressive, which was the exact word that they used. So they don't want kids to get scared, but they want them to understand that it's serious. Something else I did that I got thumbs up on, which we actually saw on Instagram. There was a teacher somewhere else who did a demonstration with a paper plate and pepper, and then she showed her students that if you dip your finger into the pepper, and the pepper represented the coronavirus, look what happens. And the pepper got all over the student's finger. And then she had another bowl with soap in it, and then she dipped the student's finger into the virus, and the pepper dispersed all over, and it showed the effects of hand washing. And my kids really liked the demonstration, and they said that is really powerful to show the effects of hand washing and how powerful that is. So they also liked facts. They said, it was really powerful to understand exactly what was happening. So facts, not too aggressive, and show us what's going on.
Uh, that's great. That's super helpful to have as sort of a hands-on exercise. Did you find any differences with regards to your high schooler? Did you find that they were sort of taking in information on their own via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or did you find that you provided most of the information? How much of it was you delivering it to them versus how much of it was finding it on their own? And ultimately, that'd be part one, I guess. And part two would be, do you, if they found out a lot of it on their own, did you find that the information was from sources that were reliable from like the CDC or NIH or something like that, or did they kind of just run into things on Facebook?
Right. I think there was so much information out there between adults and kids, and it was hard to know what was reliable. And with my high schooler, to be honest with you, the most important thing was sports. She was devastated to lose her lacrosse season. And I tried to prepare her for the possibility, the reality that she's not going to have it. And she really broke down. It the social aspect and the I don't know that it's not always what you think it will be. I guess that's going to impact your children the most. It was lacrosse killed her, and that was what pushed her over the edge, and she really had a breakdown over it. And then after that, she was kind of good to go. My middle schooler in seventh grade, she's most upset about seeing friends. She asked me today, she tried to maneuver. I have a group project. We have to get together for the group project, even though that is, obviously not mandatory. It's the social aspect and seeing your friends and getting together. Um, and my youngest is a rule follower. This is the rule, this is what we're going to do, and she's abiding by those rules. So each one is kind of taking it very differently. Um, it they're processing the information movies. So I just stuck to my message that we are shut down, we're not doing anything, and uh, just stuck to it. So that was that.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Sorry, there's some bandwidth issues I'm trying to resolve now. Um, that's super helpful. I want to throw the next one over to Tracy here. Since you're sort of overseeing teachers and students of all ages, I think there is sort of an anxiety level with parents right now. What the expectation level of them to go from parents and people who work in various industries to now being responsible for their children's education. I think you know, there's anxiety of what that means for people. Do you have any sort of hands-on ideas of how parents should feel that how they're expected to manage? I think a lot of people are going to have very high expectations of themselves, and perhaps the first week might go really well, and then things change fast, obviously with kids. Do you have any just sort of top line thoughts on what parents should expect and how high the bar they should set for themselves during
Sure.
this process?
Sure. So I would drop that bar right off the bat. So parents are their kids' first teachers every day of their lives, right? We work with the kids in school. Parents are their first teachers. The parents should not be expected, or still, they shouldn't think that they should be expected to sit with their kids for 6 hours a day at their kitchen table doing worksheets and reading and math and science. The kids will continue to learn with some fun at home, easygoing activities. I know a lot of school districts have sent home packets, which is a great supplement to, during the day they can take, a piece of time and do, 2 or 3 sheets, components, pieces of whatever sent home. But then they can spend time during the day. If they bake brownies, they can do measurement. If they build with Legos, they're doing math and equations. if they are outside running around playing soccer in their backyard with their siblings or their parents, they're getting some great, exercise in there. I think parents should not stress over teaching their kids everything that would have been in the curriculum over the course of a year. Um, we will all keep working with our students. I know I've seen so many posts again on social media of teachers who are willing to help. So if parents have a question about, whatever the lesson is in that at-home packet, definitely contact, one of their friends who's a teacher. I know that I had put out there that I can certainly help. I certainly couldn't help with AP chemistry, but I could find somebody who could help with that if that's part of their child's packet. I would not stress, and I wouldn't turn this into a your kids resenting you and being miserable that again all they're doing is sitting at a table working the whole time. There's so many other things that you can do with your kids that will absolutely keep them learning. Reading, like they should be reading every day to their kids can read to them. Asking them questions, just day-to-day questions. I had friends today that had the kids had built a Lego boat, and the mom had gone Facebook Live with it, and they were trying to see if it would float. One of the boats floated if they took the top off, so the bottom was wider. Ask the child why, like why do they think that's happening, and get the kids to think a little bit more and think a little bit deeper. And that's all great learning that they're doing that the parents don't have to stress over, but as the kids are playing, they're learning and figuring things out. And I don't have video or audio right now, so I'm not sure if you're talking or not.
I'm sorry. Here we go. I had to unmute my
Oh, okay.
microphone here. Sorry about that. No, that was super.
My image is all green, but now I can hear you at least.
That's okay, as long as you can hear me. Super helpful to hear sort of, you describing hands-on activities that you can sort of use to spur additional conversation and speak about as the child used to create it, sort of sparks its own line of questioning, which I think is really great.
But most importantly, I think the parents have to not stress because your kids will pick up on that right off the bat, right? And then you're going to have just this miserable time at home because you're mad, they're mad, and that's really not the way to go with this whole process. One of my friends who has two very young kids had posted that one child has been suspended for skipping class and the other one's already been expelled, So clearly they're fighting at the kitchen table as they're trying to do things, which should not be the way it is.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to add in that they are not the only ones in school right now. So really they're staying on pace with their friends whose parents are also trying to navigate this and their classmates. Teachers are trying to navigate this. So I think if we can just keep in the mentality that we're all in this really strange boat together right now,
Right.
That's helpful.
Absolutely.
The
strange Lego boat.
I've been seeing more each day resources online, whether it be an artist who's doing a weekly series on doodling or daily series on doodling, to musicians doing live broadcasts online, to museums that have opened up virtual art galleries. And have you found any really useful online resources for people to go to that sort of attaches on the theme of interactive fun, but also learning, but in a way that's sort of like not the parent having to teach something, it's sort of an experience that parents and kids can have together? Does anybody run into any really useful sites or places online they can access?
I have seen a lot of them. The ones you just mentioned, Doodling with Mo, I saw that one. Disney World has an interacting one now, or a interactive one where you can, go on the rides. I haven't done it yet, but it looks like it's fun. And there's no lines and no wait. There's, like I said, like you said, the museum ones. I also found a slew of online resources that I saw today that they're all about what to say to kids about the coronavirus, which I know was our last question. I can certainly throw those into the chat, and you can look at them and share them with whomever, if that helps at all.
Yes, if you want to send me an email perhaps afterwards, and I'll just attach those on to the
Sure.
after I post it. That'd be super helpful.
Sure.
This is and this could be a question for either Christina or Hannah. Obviously, hey, Hannah, you're a kindergarten teacher, but you've got a young baby at home, so that offers its own challenges. And maybe Christina, you dealing with infants in school. Are there any sort of like for me, I have a 1 year old at home, which isn't technically an infant, but young enough. Are there any sort of strategies in house that you would employ in a mixed age household where you've got a very young child and then maybe you've got one like myself that's 5 years old, that you have either learned through your experience or experiences with what we're going through now that you might advise on?
So in my experience with infants and when we get preschoolers to get involved with our infants is um, most 5-year-olds or older kids love to be the educator of those younger than them. So having your 5-year-old read the book to the infant, or um, one of the infants in our classroom really likes to get dressed, so her sister likes to help her try on her clothes, and activities like that. Most important with infants, and I think because so many families schedules are going to be so thrown off in this process, is the order of things is often more important than the schedule, in terms of keeping things consistent and keeping infants going with the flow but also content.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. How about you, Hannah? Do you have anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I mean, my infant son thinks this is the best thing ever because mom and dad are both working from home.
Yeah,
So, but I do have to say, adding on to that routine, we found that actually his routine is keeping us less anxious. It's something to focus on. It's something that is the same as it was before all this started. So I can only imagine it's not always possible, but as much as can be, keeping that the same for the kids. And I can touch on that a little more when we talk about older students too.
sure. Yeah, I know for myself, it's been a certain amount of a blessing because I tend to work long hours and I get home very often after 8 o'clock and my youngest is asleep. So the last few days has really been sort of a really kind of like a bonding. Not that I didn't know my youngest child, but I certainly knew her in a different way than my oldest, and so this has really been kind of a great opportunity for me in one way, but also a unique challenge because they operate on completely different levels, and I think that that advice Christina had regarding um, allowing them to the infant to take on sort of daily, the mundane tasks that infants really can get a kick out of, and keeping the older one engaged in that process, I think is something that I think for teachers it seems very obvious, but for some parents maybe isn't as obvious because we're just trying to hold on to the household and trying to manage ourselves, keep ourselves sane. That doesn't have to be that hard to to find some kinds of activities like that. Jen, let me ask you: do you have any thoughts on just based on your own um, expertise in terms of like learning to read, learning to write? Is there any tools that we can employ outside of just reading to our children to engage that process a bit more at home?
So I think the great thing to do, first of all, is to just conference with your kids and listen to what they're reading. So, listen to them read a page or two and ask them what they're thinking about their book. You can also do fluency activities, print out the lyrics to one of their favorite songs, and instead of having them sing the lyrics, have them read them, and work on repeated readings, especially if your child struggles with reading, to increase their fluency. So the more they listen to the song, the better they'll get at reading it. Also work on, if they're struggling with literary devices, there's so many literary devices included in song. You can also use Newsella. They have Lexiles, different Lexile texts. So you can do a lower Lexile and then have your child read the text at a lower Lexile first to get more prior knowledge on the topic, and then bump the Lexile up and read it again, and they'll be able to access a higher level Lexile. So if your child is struggling to read grade level materials, have them read the lower Lexile first, and then once a child has more prior knowledge, they can access a higher reading level. And those are all things that you can do with your child. You don't need, a teacher or a reading specialist like that, and just child's confidence. If you use Newsella, which is free, you can even give your child the quizzes and, work together. We've actually at my house been doing social studies article of the day, and we alternate kids, and each kid will do pick a topic, and then they choose an article, and it just turned out to be anything that's not corona related. And they choose an article and they make a presentation on the article, and then they present the article during dinner. And the girls have all used Newsella to do it because they're so familiar with Newsella. So you can kind of incorporate Newsella to do that. They've actually, without my encouraging it, they've done kind of like PowerPoint presentations, and it's worked out really nicely.
Yeah, that's all. That's all really great resource information. I should really quick. I want to do a shout out to CERC here. SERC, CTSERC.org. That's the State Education Resource Center here, and that's a good conglomeration of resources and educators, administrators. That it's a great place to go to gain valuable information in this area for families and as well as educators. I want to transition really quickly to one area that I'm adjunct faculty over at UConn as well as WestConn. I'm an audio engineer by trade and producer, but I teach as well. And one of the hot topics of one colleague of mine, he's doing a lot of really great research on at UConn Stanford in digital media and design department, is screen time. And we're obviously in a position now where kids are going to get a lot more screen time than usual. Does anybody have any thoughts about screen time in general? From what I know, which isn't a lot, I know that age 7-ish is sort of a critical time in terms of ramping up the amount of screen time, or frankly introducing it at all. Although, it's certainly impossible this day and age to completely avoid it. And obviously, there's a difference between screen time when it comes to an iPad or mobile versus TV time. But does anybody have any sort of top line thoughts on the use of screen time during this period of time? And perhaps, obviously we can avoid it, but are there sort of better uses of it? Does anybody want to chime in on that?
If I could jump in, I have a few thoughts. I think, first of all, it is kind of a hot topic. And I know parents hear a lot about limiting screen time, and obviously we want to be mindful of that. But once again, kind of what Dr. Tracy was saying, that this is a difficult time and give yourself grace. It certainly can be a wonderful parenting tool. And I think to that, come up with some expectations around screens. What is the purpose for using it? Is it a show you're going to put on in the morning so you can get yourself together? Is it something you put on for an older child while you get the baby ready for bed. I know from our district, we also sent iPads home with kids with some lessons that they need to complete. So thinking about when is iPad screen time there for their entertainment versus when it's a learning tool. And I think if we can differentiate that for students, what the expectations look like, the purpose, I think that can make it a little less of a battle, hopefully. And just being really upfront with that, deciding it for yourself first, and then really sticking to those expectations when your child is using it.
How much engagement do we think parents should have with the use of tablets? I mean, obviously, there's some apps that are designed to just be like hand off to the kid and let them go nuts. And obviously, different ages obviously has an impact on this. But are there sort of some rules of thumb that to think about in terms of types of apps and the age groups those apps are designed for about how parents should interact with them?
So I would monitor apps all the time, whether you're at home during this crazy time that we're all in, or whether your kids are in school and it's a normal, typical day. You should always monitor your kids' apps and what they're on and what they're doing, right? And there are so many like great YouTube channels until the one that your child's watching ends and something else that's very inappropriate pops up. So you should always be aware and always have those parental controls, whether your child is 5 years old or 16 years old. Parents need to know what their kids are looking at and what they're doing. I think that's just a very basic rule of thumb. As far as what's going on in today's world, I think that, I think there are some great apps. I'm going to send you a whole bunch of them that I just found, like virtual field trips that your kids can do. There's also like the appropriate time for just like they can just watch TV, like they can just watch, Nickelodeon or PBS or some good educational stations as well. We don't watch a lot of TV in our house, so I don't know all the ins and outs um, of the new shows that are out there that are educational. But they're going to need their downtime just to kind of hang out and watch TV. And breaks during the day is really okay. It really is okay.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I'll be looking forward to seeing some of these resources that you send along. That'll be great. Should there be any? Obviously, we're coming out of it's March now. The school year that usually ends in June. Obviously, kids go on summer vacation in June to end of August. So it's a comparable amount of time. So we're looking at basically probably what amounts to twice as long of a summer vacation. Are there any, and this is probably a question for, well, it could be a question for anybody really. Any thoughts on developmental concerns that could arise during this period, or is that too much of a reach? Is that putting undue stress on a parent? Because I've personally talked to some parents who are like, oh, my kid's gonna miss potentially 3 months of school, and then and then who knows how long some of these measures go into the summer. So basically, you're removing all this learning time away. What should parents be thinking about? And it kind of goes back to my question earlier, but maybe an extension on that. Does anybody want to reflect on that?
I think that teachers are doing a really good job with administrators as far as looking at what the curriculum demands are from now until the end of the year and laying out a framework of what kids need to know in order to be prepared for the next grade level. And I think based on my husband's also a teacher, I'm a teacher, and then my kids obviously. So between my kids and my husband and I, we have 3 school districts in our house. In all 3 districts, I think I have a pretty good overview of what what districts are doing. I think everyone is trying to ensure that kids are just essentially going to be prepared for the next grade level, and that kids are going to be emotionally solid. The priority is that kids are okay. we started remote learning this week with my own kids, and the first thing the teachers did was, how are you doing? It almost like the first week of school lessons. How is it going? Can you get on okay? And what have you been up to? What kind of games are you playing? Youngest daughter was meditating. And I think that shows that emotional stability is good. We haven't forgotten about, the social emotional piece, and knowing from, like, going back to my planning in my own district, we're going back to our priority standards and what has to be covered from now until the end of the year in order to make sure our kids are prepared, and what is non-essential. And I think, teachers are going to do what has to be done to make sure our kids are prepared, emotionally and academically. And I think we're all in this together and working with parents. And I think I think it's going to happen, because I think we've been doing that all year, and I don't know that the learning will stop come June, because this has been, a crazy time, and maybe we'll give kids more of an extended learning experience over the summer. So instead of just the usual summer packet, we'll, give them a bit more of a nudge to keep going over the summer.
Yeah, that's good.
I also know that it was said
Yeah,
before,
please go.
but I just need to reiterate that we are all in this together. Like we are, like their peers in California and Nevada and North Dakota and all over the U.S. are dealing with the same things they're dealing with. Their classmates are dealing with the same things they're dealing with. So when we all do get back to our regular routines, they're not going to be alone. They're not the only one that had to stay home for a few months or a few weeks or whatever it turns out being. And I think that's really important to remember. I have a lot of teacher friends who are equally as sad. Like the first 2 days, they were like, woohoo. And now it's like they miss their kids, they miss their classrooms, and they miss what they do every day. So I think it's important to recognize the staff and what the staff is going through, as well as what their students are going through.
Hey, it's been a really amazing year. It's in Norwalk here, and a lot of people are giving them a hard time for keeping school open a little bit longer than surrounding towns. But it seems that that time was really used very well. From what I understand, the packets and the kits that were sent home for parents to use were very comprehensive and very helpful. And I hear story after story of teachers doing online sessions and calling every day to check in on kids. So it's obviously, I mean, it takes a certain kind of person to do a job like teach or to be a nurse or something like that, where you're wholly invested in taking care of someone other than yourself. And I want to kind of make that transition in terms of, I saw a meme the other day. I think it was after Monday night, saying like, "Oh, we've done this self quarantine thing for one day, and I realized teachers need to make $1 billion a day." Um, what? Obviously, there are things to to be the kind of person that has that look on life and has a career that has those kinds of responsibilities. Are there any tips for self-care? I know that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do that because in teaching obviously takes up so much bandwidth of life, but is there any sort of tips for people who are undergoing the stressors of dealing with children, but now on a different level, about sort of some things they could keep in mind, or some tools or mantras? I don't know, anything that they think could be helpful.
One of the things that we do remind ourselves the most of in early childhood is that the kids will, and this is true of any age group, the kids will often take your idea or the activity that you want to do and do something completely different. And you have to give yourself a level of grace and understanding that, like, maybe your plan doesn't work and that's fine. And it's still good. And they're still having an experience. They're still having a learning experience that is providing them with an experience. um, and in addition, I just wanted to touch really briefly on the concerns about the developmental gap that may happen. I know I've spoken to a lot of parents over the years in preschools, and one of the things they like said about sending their kids to preschools is that the environment is so set up for their size, and that they're allowed to make messes and go out and do a lot of things that are a little bit more cumbersome to do in a home environment when there's just other people and other age groups to consider. So I hope, understanding that parents need to do what works best for them in their home lives, but that they give their infants and toddlers opportunities to make messes and to still like run around and practice those things during this time where we kind of have to limit our mobility a little bit more. Um, just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, that's really useful.
Can I add in a piece about self-care as well?
Of
I
course.
always use the analogy that when you're on an airplane, they tell you to, if the plane experiences a loss of cabin pressure, to put the oxygen on yourself before helping somebody next to you. I think if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to help your kids successfully. You definitely need a break too. You definitely need, whether it's meditation, there's so many great apps for meditation out there, or yoga, or just sitting out and just having a cup of coffee first thing in the morning before the kids get up, if you can beat them to get up. I don't know what time, kids get up now. Um, but I really believe in taking care of yourself first. And then you can be way more successful with helping your own kids. Keeping a diary, a journal.
Oh yeah. Um, certainly. Just to riff off of, because I've got you here for a second. I mean, you work at a performing arts school. Certainly, arts and music and theater. There's, I mean, there's so much research, so much evidence that being involved in those kinds of things not only helps the emotional skills, but social skills and skills in STEM classes and all of that.
Absolutely.
Um, it'd be really, do you have any just sort of top line thoughts on the integration of those kinds of things within the day to day during this period of time and how it might be helpful to keep moving along in the days moving along?
Absolutely. So throughout your day, absolutely find time to fit in those arts, whether you are helping reading a script or working with kids on a scene that they might be practicing for a show that's coming up. We had a bunch of shows in our school that we had to obviously put on hold, but the kids can still certainly continue to practice what they were working on before we left. I've seen a few dance classes, not through my school yet, but through some dance companies that the kids are dancing in chat rooms like this. So the dance teacher's on there doing the teaching, and the kids are part of the lesson. You can definitely, research some music, your favorite music. Like Jen had talked about using music for literacy content. There's so many things you can do with the arts to keep it involved in your day to day life, even if it's not, again, during this coronavirus, at home isolation thing. You should always have some type of music, theater, dance, drama as part of who you are, in my opinion.
I'm gonna hold you for one more second here. I see a question
Sure.
here. I don't know if you see it in the chat window, but the question is, I have a teen and a tween. They've been really good about being shut in since Wednesday. I know they're going to get frustrated soon with the lack of socializing. Do you have any thoughts on how they can engage?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So if you have access, well, okay, so you do have access to technology because you just typed a question to us. Um, Set up something like this with your kids. Set up a chat room with your kids and their friends. When we were kids, we used to call each other on the telephone. Like that still exists. They could call their friends and talk. I'm trying in my head to think of how do you create a Facebook for kids between the ages of 6 and 10, right? Like something to that extent. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but there are definitely things that you can do with your kids. Think about back when you were little and how you socialized. I mean, maybe we played outside, so that's really not an option playing with friends at this point. But I definitely remember calling friends on the phone. I remember, sending letters, like you could write to pen pals possibly, like, and hopefully get the mail going back and forth a little bit, or even just email your friends. And that's also a writing activity which they could do with some of their friends. And they could get a group chat going in an email. So there are definitely things that you can do to help them communicate. How old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking, Diana?
that,
12 and 15. Yeah. So I don't know if they're on social media or not. The 12-year-old might be a little bit young for social media. The 15-year-old's probably on it. But the 15 is a musician. That's fantastic. So, like, can he start writing anything, or can she start writing anything? Any pieces of music? Um, the 12-year-old is a social media fan. Okay, that's good. So I'm sure they're seeing their friends that way. But the sleepover party, definitely not. The night out for pizza, definitely not. But there are a ton of things that you can do online. Even like words with friends, like set up words with friends with them, and they can play Scrabble with their peers, or any of those apps that you can play with somebody else.
yeah,
But
that's
that's somebody else that you know, not
I,
the apps that you're playing with people that you don't know. Those are not safe. Just the ones that you know.
there's actually had a good half an hour this afternoon. My youngest, who's 16 months right now, she's now fully capable of sort of, I can go grab coffee or I can make lunch and she can do her own thing. It's totally fine. And this afternoon we arranged a virtual play date with one of Josie, my oldest friends. So they were on the phone for half an hour, just playing with Barbies, whatever. And I was able to actually walk away and actually drink coffee in the other room for 10 minutes and not feel, as though I had to. So that was really nice that she was able to. And it's her birthday today too. So I was dealing with the pressure of feeling bad that she wasn't getting the birthday that turning 5 deserves. So,
I have been calling my students on their birthdays this week. So I did pull the March birthday list before I left. But I've loved talking. I've talked to 2 kids a day since the 15th, and I've loved doing that.
oh,
So
that's
yeah, it's been kind of fun. And the kids are sort of like surprised that I'm calling them. Oh, I'm just checking in. Happy birthday.
yeah, that's great. Um, how much should and perhaps we can start with the people that work with the youngest kids first and up. Um, how much should we trying to be sort of emulating this the school day? I've got some friends, parents who are sort of more type A and everything's very buttoned up and they've got the full schedule. And I tried in theory to think about wrapping my head around doing that and it didn't really happen that way. But and also I've got some friends who are sort of more like free range parents where they learn stuff by sort of um in a bit more of an open, less defined way. Do you have any thoughts on sort of how much we should try to emulate sort of their predefined schedule? Obviously, kids like routine, but how much of that is sort of helpful or hurtful right now?
I
Um, yeah, Hannah, please go ahead.
okay. I would say, once again, you're your child's first teacher. I mean, if they grew up in a home that's very buttoned up and you try to be loosey goosey, they're going to be really confused, and vice versa. So I think in this, you have to kind of stay true to what feels right for you. Kids get different teachers every year. They have to be flexible and work with however their new classroom is running. So kids are really able to do that pretty well. I would suggest kind of breaking your day up into like blocks or pieces. So maybe it's a looser schedule where in the morning we have some playtime, then we eat breakfast, then we do some reading, then we eat lunch, then some nap. So looser blocks of time, and then in that I would give some choices, and you could have your child even help you come up with choices. So okay, when it's reading time, what are some reading things we could do? So maybe a choice would be I could read a book to you. You could read a book by yourself. You could read a book to your little sister. You could maybe do some reading on an iPad or with some music. And then um, I would even go, if it would work for your child, if it would be helpful, even coming up with a little visual schedule. It could just be a quick sketch. It could be something that they draw a picture for, just so they can really see those pieces of their day and know what's coming. It could help parents too if that's something that you are comfortable with. Just so everyone knows you're not trying to reinvent the wheel every single day. Everyone knows this is kind of, how our morning goes. These are some choices I have for the afternoon. Of course, there are days when that's not going to work, and you just have to be flexible within that. But I do think some semblance of a routine, like you said, can really help keep kids regulated. It can help with anxiety. But you have to be family by family, what works for you.
Anybody else want to add to that at all?
I did for all three of mine, I did a big schedule and I posted it on the wall. And then I put kind of like sticky notes for the blocks of time and then divided it up so that each child has kind of like different options during the blocks of time. And then as they complete their task in the block of time, they check it off and they've finished that task so that they have a sense of completion and working on executive functioning and dividing up your time. And our remote learning plan has them following their actual schedule for the middle school and the high school, but for the elementary school, it doesn't. So with my youngest, I have her they just have to go on Google Classroom and accomplish tasks. So for her, she wants to go on and do all of the work in one day. So I have to get her to kind of like divide up the work and go more on the schedule that I had created for before remote learning started, or else she'll do everything on one day and work straight through. So I think it's all essential to create the schedule as well.
Did you want to bring in your kids at all to sort of reflect on their 2 cents on this?
Sure.
So if you want, obviously this is going to be posted online, so if you prefer to turn off your camera for this, that's completely fine. It's completely up to you.
Okay.
Girls? Girls? It's time. They're going to turn off the camera.
It's time.
Alright?
I could maybe add while we're just waiting. I know some of those scheduling things might sound like a lot right now, and they do take time up front to teach and to reinforce with your kiddos, but it will bring independence later on. Even with the youngest learners, they're expected to know certain things and get out their own materials and things at school, so they are capable. Some of that work up front does pay off later.
Yeah.
Can I also add something about our high school seniors or our college seniors? Because my youngest is actually a college senior, and he goes to WPI in Worcester. They're on quarters, not semesters, and he has spent the past 15 arranging his final senior quarter to be class on Wednesday only. So we had Monday, Tuesday, class on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So he did a great job over the past 3 years, 3.5 years setting it up. And now he's home for the rest of the year, and commencement may be postponed or may be canceled. So our kids who are graduating in 2020, whether they're high school kids or college kids, definitely need an extra bit of love, boost, caring. Because, again, like they said at the beginning, the kids who lost all their sports stuff, that's really hard. And the kids who are losing their proms and their senior weeks and all those senior things that are such a socially important part of their life and what they look forward to might not be happening. So we need to somehow figure out a way to be extra super supportive to those kids, whether they're your kids or your neighbor's kids, but send an extra bit of love their way.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. All right, Jen, you're up with the kiddos.
All right. I just have one right now. This is
Okay.
Sierra. This is my youngest. She is in
How old are
6th
you?
grade. She has advice.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
Go ahead.
So kids like their space in difficult times. And kids don't like it when my mom got crazy. She said, you got the computer and you got all your stuff. That kind of drove me nuts. Kids like to be independent sometimes. Unless sometimes they want support, sometimes they want independence. like sometimes this depends on the kid. And my sister like asked if she could go to her friend's house to do this project, and my mom got really mad. But like I feel like not you shouldn't be get mad. It's like explain why.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's just going to make her want to do even more something.
Mm-hmm.
And guess
That's awesome.
positive. Because
Mm-hmm.
like it could, if the parents stay positive, the kid's gonna stay positive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all I got.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
thank
is
you, honey.
super advice. Man, I couldn't say it. I mean, yeah, that was excellent. Yeah, I think, I think during this period of time, obviously we're applying a lot of pressure to ourselves, and obviously we're dealing with our own frustrations and insecurities and anxieties and stress having to do with this period of time. That's very easy to sort of allow that to creep in to I mean, we all parent in our own different ways, right? But certainly the world around us and what we're dealing with can influence those. So understanding what works for each individual kid and based on their personality, obviously. I mean, that was a great insight. That's awesome. Does anybody else want to? So we have a few more minutes left. Does anybody have any sort of like last top line thoughts or anything they wanted to express? Everybody is good? Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to take a quick glance, see if Diana had anything
Wait, can I
else.
just make one more recommendation? Jen,
Yeah,
I
please,
loved
please.
hearing from your daughter. That was so authentic. I thought that was great. Justin, I don't know if you can do this, but if you could do a panel of, a handful of kids, a younger kid, a middle grade kid, an older kid, a college kid, and just get their perspective, that might be very interesting as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I'll have to think about that and reach out to some people on that. That's a really great idea.
My
Um,
middle daughter was in here and then she got nervous and left. What she had said was she wanted independence. And I made them have their doors open and I was checking in on them while they're doing the remote learning. And she said that she wanted to be more independent. She knew what she was doing with remote learning and she didn't want me hovering. So, but she wanted me to be there for like, she wanted lunch and she wanted me to bring her water and she wanted me to be there, but then she wanted her independence.
so basically, this is all an extension of parenting in general, right? I mean,
Mhm.
how much you hover, how much you protect and support and engage, and how much slack you give, and obviously the personalities and the age and the grade and life experiences have a big impact on how that plays out. But um, that's good. That's really helpful to consider it from that sort of um, top line look. All right.
All
This is
three were very much like they wanted to be kind of like on their own with the remote learning. They didn't want anyone hovering.
it's probably also, I mean, I wonder if part of that is because their school life is sort of like separate from their, it's like their own world. So maybe there's a certain amount of independence that they have in their school life and they want to hold on to some of that independence. And now we're in this weird zone where the person like the personality at school and the person that exists at school that sometimes is different from the person at home or sort of inter the lines are being crossed, and I wonder if
Mm.
some of that is playing out. That's really interesting. All right, I'm going to end this here. Thank you so much. I'm just seeing some of these links. If you posted links in this chat, and there are a handful of you, would you mind dropping those to me in an email so they don't get lost? And then I will, and I will make sure to post them along with this link so that people can easily access them there. But I appreciate all of your time and your expertise and your thoughts, and hopefully people can get some use out of this. Um, that's, during this whole time period. So everybody stay healthy, keep your 6 feet, wash your hands, all that good stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.